Man, E3's over. How'd you find it?
It was alright.
You never have any fun, do you?
Untrue, I had a great time memeing on Todd Howard and his bold-faced lies.
Yeah, alright, we should probably get to work on making the video now.
I really don't want to work right now.
You were complaining about work? All you gotta do is look pretty and sound mildly annoyed.
It truly is my life's calling, isn't it?
Whatever. I just wish John was here to make this easier.
Yo, guess who just came back from E3, boy?
The summer has always been a very popular season that people tend to look forward to, given they didn't come from the tropics or Australia. Nice pleasant sun, clear skies, beaches become viable locations for entertainment all of a sudden, and of course, for all the students in the world, the beginning of the coveted summer vacation. So yeah, summer is almost universally a fun time, but arguably my favorite thing about the season is just how much more fun it becomes when you are also a fan of video games. Summertime for gamers is filled with all kinds of fun events, summer games done quick, various gaming conventions, multiple esports tournaments, especially EVO, and on top of all of that, we have the increasingly useless but also wholly entertaining Electronic Expo.
E3 has been sticking around in the gaming industry for over a decade now, consistently acting as that one time of year where both developers and publishers come together to yell, "Buy our products!" Sometimes with the addition of a fancy CG trailer, or on the rare occasion, some gameplay from the actual video game that they want us to buy. Sometimes it works pretty well, other times not so much.
However inconsistent the event is, we watch it anyways, because yelling at cool things or laughing at incompetent things with friends is pretty fun. And after that, we get to discuss amongst ourselves which publisher put out the most impressive show. So in the spirit of that completely pointless competition, this video is going to be doing just that.
I decided to get together with these guys and some other denizens to check out almost every presentation at the event live. There's gonna be a bunch of snippets of those live reactions here too, just so you can share in the hype. So let's get together to laugh, scream, roast some companies, and overall just have some fun.
You know, maybe I don't like video games.
The funny thing about Bethesda's presentation is that I actually went into it with absolutely zero expectations. And how could you not after last year's kind of mediocre performance, which was immediately succeeded by multiple months where literally everything bad that could have possibly happened to Bethesda fans happened in triplicate. I didn't know what to expect. In fact, I don't know if anyone knew what to expect at that point. I feel like everyone just kind of wanted to see what their strategy for recovering from the fallout of 76 was gonna be. Were they going to come on stage and spend 15 minutes profusely apologizing for their crimes? Were they going to double down, adding more content to games that nobody cared about, and more middle fingers to our faces? Were they going to shove Todd Howard in front of us for him to tell us sweet lies and hope for having all of it blow over? The actual answer to all of these questions were yes, and then some.
Honestly, I think the best decision they could have made would have been to just sweep Fallout 76 under the rug, take some snide references to how bad they messed up, and just sell us a bunch of new games. And you know what? They almost had us going there for a second. That seemed exactly like what they were going to do. That is, of course, until Todd walked onto the stage and started saying things like this.
But the team kept working on it, and you kept playing it.
No, it didn't.
And through all of that,
No, it
something
didn't.
amazing has happened. This game has one of the best online communities we've ever seen. We made a
No.
survival game.
No!
Now look, I don't really got the hard statistics, my dad doesn't work at Bethesda or anything, but that didn't sound accurate.
Todd then proceeded to stroke Bethesda's collective ego by bragging that their second ever mobile game ever was also their second most successful mobile game, which, you know, you think is a given. But what do I know? I'm not Todd Howard, the absolute legend that he is. Then Bethesda, bold men these people, decided to do the unthinkable and actually add NPCs into Fallout 76. You know, the things they previously boasted about not having in the game at last year's presentation. It's just there now. Probably because it was a stupid idea to not have them in the first place, but what do I know? I'm not Todd Howard. And then the absolute madmen they are decided, no, that's not it, there's more. We're gonna add a fucking Battle Royale to this thing, and then brag about it.
Fallout 70.
At this point, I believe everybody kinda knew where this was going, and man, it went. Most of the remainder of the presentation was minimal content updates to games that already existed, announcements for a couple games that seemed cool but had no gameplay, mobile game jabatery, shilling for more dragons in literally every game.
Add dragons to everything.
Stop it.
I need you to stop. I need him to stop. Technical difficulties, and a pleasant reminder that these pretty thumbnails exist for games that we're sure to get by 2025. The only positives of note were a giant expansion to Elder Scrolls Online, tons of gameplay and a release date for Doom Eternal, and of course, the precious and wholesome Ikumi Nakamura passionately detailing her new game Ghostwire to the public in the most adorable fashion possible. You are too pure for this publisher.
Probably the most entertaining thing about the presentation was the crowd. For whatever reason, and don't ask me why, anything that anyone ever said on that stage, ever, was immediately followed up with a copious amount of frenzied applause. One guy in particular was just really happy about everything. It was pretty hilarious. I don't know if they were paid for it, or if it was just some big meme, but man, they knew how to have fun, and gotta respect that. Oh well. Rest in peace, Fallout, I guess.
Fallout is dead! Interesting. Fallout is
Oh
dead!
my fucking
People have been asking, right? I'd put up stuff on Instagram saying, hey, give me questions.
This guy's an
Community
asshole.
wanted to know.
I think the mere fact that EA is not dead at the bottom of the list says something about Bethesda. Although I could understand people thinking they should stay right at the bottom, because in all honesty, it's not like they did much better.
EA has kind of just fallen to irrelevancy at this point. They were the first ones to present at E3, but not a lot of people really bothered to watch them. And can you really blame them? History shows they're not really fun people. Heck, we didn't even watch them live because we really didn't think it was worth it.
I actually struggled deciding whether or not to even go back and watch them at all. I legitimately pondered if I should include them in the video because I wasn't sure they even counted at this point. But who am I kidding? They're a publisher and they presented something, so I guess I have to talk about them.
Your sacrifice was not in vain.
I mean, it kinda was.
Regardless, EA was about what I would have expected. It's boring, full of cringe, and after a while it devolves into a cesspool of sports, but it's just edging out over Bethesda because surprisingly they show a lot of gameplay and give a lot of actually useful information for the things they're presenting. And to my knowledge, don't spend a good chunk of the event lying to my face or pretending that adding basic features to a game nearly a year after its launch is a thing to be applauded. Plus, some of the stuff they showed is kinda interesting. They have their entire rundown for their second season of updates for Apex Legends, which seems to be bringing a bunch of really good, long-awaited content to the players. The few of them that are left, maybe the rest will come back. They updated Battlefield 5 with a bunch of stuff as well, which honestly shocked me because that game's been so insignificant that I forgot it came out just last winter. And then they showed off their new single-player Star Wars game that's totally not Sekiro.
Definitely not Sekiro.
100% not Sekiro. Like, what is Sekiro even? Get that stuff out of here.
Regardless, it still seems pretty fun, and I'm probably gonna kick myself when I eventually pick it up. Probably in 2020 after I get through all of the other things in November that are way better. But yeah, if it doesn't sound like much, that's because it wasn't, but it was honest. They came out and did what they needed to do, which Bethesda didn't. You could make an argument that a boring presentation is worse than a laughably bad presentation, and I'd be inclined to agree with you. But I'm gonna be nice and throw him a bone this time, because hey, even though you or I definitely may not be into Madden or FIFA and their constantly evolving methods of illustrating realistic sweat, it doesn't really change the fact that the audience definitely exists, and they're probably pretty happy right now. I mean, they have to exist, there's like 20 of these things and they keep making more, so it must be doing something for EA's bank account. But please, can we just not have Greg Miller next time? He's the worst. I don't even think the people he was interviewing liked him very much.
Only on Epic Games Store.
Speaking of boring, why do people keep thinking that a talk show is the correct play to make when presenting a game at E3? PC Gamer Show does this every single time and it's always dreadful. But hey, they showed off like 30 games, so good on them. They're automatically better than the shows at the bottom that just kind of exist. On top of showing a crap load of games, many of which having gameplay footage coupled with them, there's always seems to be at least one game that will suit everyone's needs shown up at the show. You like tower defense? They got tower defense. You like shooters? They got shooters. You like strategy games? They have a ton of strategy games.
Yeah, but the downside of having a genre for everyone is that there are long stretches of time where you just won't be interested in anything because it's just not for you. You could argue this for any presentation, but it seems to be exemplified by the PC gaming show, mostly because PCs open the way for an influx of very specific genres due to their native control settings. Like strategy games. Man, are there a lot of strategy games in this show. There's also the fact that the PC gaming show is just the indie dev showcase at times. Which, to its credit, when other publishers bring up indie games, it's usually in a montage of 5-second clips with meaningless gameplay to the tune of campy-ass music. At least here, indie games get more of a meaningful spotlight, but it doesn't help that indies are usually more niche in genre. You can get a lot of cool and unique stuff out of them, but they're usually not going to be as polished, massive in scale, or hype-inducing as the AAAs.
Doesn't really help that you can practically feel the suit and tie aura coming from the presenters at all times. I mean, sometimes they try to lighten the mood and come across as casual, but they're not good at it.
So this one is so corporate, it's not even fun to make fun of it.
Hey, I mean that one girl dressed up as a shark once? That was pretty funny.
Yeah, that was just kind of off-putting, honestly.
I just thought that was weird.
Well, I mean, I do it friggin'... I think it's pretty hilarious.
I think you're part of the problem. Despite this, there were some pretty cool games that were shown and a select few that I'm personally looking forward to, like Midnight Ghost Hunt, which is just supernatural prop hunt, Shenmue 3 because it's Shenmue 3, and Chris Tales because it's like the one RPG that they put in the show and it looks beautiful, it plays like Paper Mario, and I just love it, I love it, I love it. Get the demo. Do it. Unless, of course, you don't have a PC that can play it.
Get a PC, boy! I can't afford it, damn it! Get a job, boy!
Also, I feel like I should mention this now, but the show's affiliation with Epic Games kinda sours the experience. I'm not gonna make a full detour to rant about the moral compass of Tim Sweeney or anything, but it's gotta suck when anything that looks remotely cool in the presentation turns out to be only available on a platform people are actively trying to avoid. The jerks even took Shenmue 3 hostage. Not that it wasn't mostly the devs' fault, considering they decided to do that after receiving a boatload of money directed towards Steam keys. 'Cause it was, but, you know, I digress. You win this round, Tim. I just don't know what happened here.
I don't think any of us figured out what happened here. Ubisoft definitely kinda has a reputation of being the weird, goofy, and memey wildcard of the event. Sometimes they could just be as boring as EA and show off the things that nobody cares about. Sometimes they can be the life of the party and show off interesting stuff. Sometimes they can just lie to your face like they did with the original Watch Dogs reveal, among other things. And sometimes they can just push Aisha Taylor onto the stage and the entire presentation just becomes something. Kinda miss her, actually.
The mixed bag that Ubisoft is kinda hard to predict, so their overall quality just jumps up and down like a kangaroo on a spring. The kangaroo apparently took cocaine this time though, because the quality kept jumping really randomly and really fast. They started off with a new Watch Dogs game that unironically looks amazing, and set a high standard for what was to come.
Yo, me not no fuck you now.
She has a gun?! Immediately after that, it decided to talk about television. So that happened. Then they talked about Rainbow Six Siege stuff and brought Adventure Time to Brawlhalla, which... okay. Then we got a lot of Ghost Recon trailers, complete with dog, which... cool. Then we got a mobile game that subsequently crushed every Splinter Cell fan's hope of getting a new game for another couple of years, but... hey, you know, Sam's in it, so that's cool.
Everyone's here.
Then we got dancing, which honestly is probably the one thing that everybody really expected to actually happen. There we go. We got the dancing! We got the dancing!
We got dancing!
Speeding forward through this, they proceed to drone on about minimal updates to For Honor, a new co-op Rainbow Six game, an expansion to The Division 2, complete with Twitch streamers being loud for no f***ing reason, another f***ing subscription service that's compatible with the Stadia, but nobody ever really wanted, and then there's a new roller derby game that actually looked kinda cool, but then it was followed by Greek Breath of the Wild that also looked kinda cool, but then it just ended. It ended on Greek Breath of the Wild with no gameplay.
I just don't understand the decision-making process for this conference. There weren't really many new things shown off, and the new things that were shown off didn't really show off anything substantial aside from Watch Dogs. It makes me wonder why they didn't end with Watch Dogs. It would have made more sense to do that than what they actually ended with. There were a lot of old stuff with new content, which is good, but not particularly exciting. And what the heck was that TV segment about? Have we learned nothing from Microsoft? Remember that one E3 when Ubisoft revealed Beyond Good and Evil 2? What happened to that shit? That's not a good sign.
For real? Like, people can give us money for it.
Yep.
Does Devolver even count as an E3 conference anymore?
It's more like a sketch comedy, really.
Devolver Digital's biggest strength is the fact that they don't really seem to give a shit about anything. They know who their target audience is and appeal to them appropriately, which is why they seem to go over so well. They don't take E3 very seriously at all, which honestly is admirable because E3 really shouldn't be taken that seriously in the first place.
They do enough to get their game shown, while also having the gall to meme on the competition, with sublime parody and amounts of gore and coarse language that would make a Tarantino pop a boner. And of course there's that lunatic of a woman that always steals the show. It's really amusing to have a publisher that's obviously self-aware of the common tropes of E3 and the gaming industry in general.
You could make an argument that they're maybe a bit too self-aware. I mean, this time around, I wasn't even sure if I was watching a presentation about Devolver anymore. I don't remember any of the new games they showed off. I think there was a weird Battle Royale thing, and I saw more Pedro, but I think it was just the same footage of Pedro that we've seen a billion times. Listen, I'm all for making fun of companies trying to yell at us to buy their products, but honestly, I feel like Devolver isn't even there to advertise the games that they're publishing. Just shitpost to make people go, hey look, we're that underdog that published Hotline Miami. Look how corporate everyone is. We're better than that. We also published Enter the Gungeon, without actually doing what I think E3 is really meant for, telling people what you're working on and not what your company is or what it did. There was also that thing that they did where they released all of their hit old games on Steam as slightly inferior knockoffs on a collection that was at a discount of 1%. I mean, it's funny, but that really just proves my point.
Regardless, I think it would be foolish to say they don't know what they're doing because people spent money on it anyway. Why? Because it's a meme, and memes make money. If you have to ask why again, you clearly underestimate the internet's capacity for degeneracy. I'm sure there's probably more things, but it was lost in between the gross shitpost that was unveiling before our very eyes.
Single tear!
Superb amount of props for having the balls to shit on Nintendo Directs using their format and graphic design to a T. Needless to say, I'm extremely invested in the ever-expanding lore of this series. But next time, just tone it down a bit, please? And stop cliffhangering people. Like, why? Why do you keep doing this? It's getting absurd now. What? Stop! No, you can't! You cannot keep going! What is this?
Buy our products. On Buy our products. Every decision.
Microsoft's always been in a kind of weird spot at E3. They always start off the event, if you don't count EA, and you probably don't, so yeah, and their conferences are usually decent. Usually. But that's just it, they're just decent, and most of that's because they're frickin' Microsoft. They're one of the biggest publishers in gaming, they have probably the highest budget for it, and if not them, Sony. They make their own friggin' consoles, just the pure amount of things that Microsoft do guarantees that you're gonna see something in their presentations. And honestly, over time they've been steadily getting better at presenting, but they always seem to fall short under someone else. Namely and consistently, Sony.
However, Sony isn't here this time to bless us with flute solos or Norman's fetus, so in theory, Microsoft should have had free reign to go ham. And they kinda did. They open up, boast that they have like 60 games to show us over the course of nearly 2 hours, stroke their financial prowess by stating that they've bought out lots of developers like Double Fine, and announced a few hitting titles along with their new Xbox Game Pass. They capped it off with the general specifications of their new console releasing next year. That is also launching with Halo Infinite. This sounds great, doesn't it? It sounds pretty solid. In actuality though, it was good, but not that good.
Most of the highs of the presentation were spread across long stretches of middle grounds and some lows. For every Halo Infinite, there was a plane simulator. For every Gears of War 5, there was a Gears of War Pop Funko equivalent for some reason. And for every Project Scarlet, there was a consistent burning reminder to
Buy our products.
Then there were parts that were just weird, like Microsoft making an entire sports car out of Lego pieces in order to advertise a Lego Forza expansion. Yeah, that happened. So yeah, in retrospect, we got Cyberpunk 2077, but f***ing Keanu Reeves on stage backing it, how the f***? But we also got like 45 teaser trailers with no gameplay, so yeah. It doesn't really matter if you have 60 games if there's not much game to show of them. That one saying about quality over quantity, I think you should take note of that.
Punch woman is here.
Yeah, she punched them.
She's going to punch
The woman punched the thing. So, to me, when was the last time Square Enix had a live press conference instead of a pre-recorded video? Alright, now when was the last time it was good? That's what I thought. Fortunately for them, I guess, there's a first time for everything.
Square Enix just came in and was like, hey, we got video games. Everyone else was like, I don't believe you. And then they started off with Final Fantasy VII Remake gameplay for 20 minutes, and all of a sudden everyone was like, okay, I believe you.
That was probably the strongest opening to a presentation in the entirety of E3. People have been saying they won the whole thing based off just those first 20 minutes, which, fair, it was a pretty good 20 minutes. We got an in-depth actual showcase on how the game's gonna look and play, great showcase of mechanics, new content that was not in the original game, Tifa's ass, Tifa kicking ass, and then a release date. Everybody who's been waiting for this game for forever, which, yes, is probably very happy right now. However, there was like an extra hour of this presentation, and I don't see many people talking about it. That's probably because when you start off with your trump card and immediately transition into smaller things like Life is Strange, Dragon Quest XI, the game we already have, Dragon Quest Builders 2, the game we've already seen a lot of, and discount Call of Duty, the game that, no, people just don't care.
There was also a Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC, which is a big deal. Or it would have been, if it wasn't the same trailer that was both shown off at the Kingdom Hearts concert, leaked onto the internet by Scum, and then uploaded to the public in retaliation, 3 days before we actually were meant to see it. So, yeah.
It picked itself back up again with meaningful stuff we actually haven't seen, like a huge expansion from Final Fantasy XIV, the localization of the Saga RPGs, more Oninaki gameplay, making Brave Exvius an actual video game, a reminder that Final Fantasy VIII does in fact exist, and finally, the Avengers game that they've been teasing for a long ass time. All this stuff is pretty cool and honestly is worthy of winning, but you might be beginning to notice a trend here with their presentation. Most notably that, well, I have come here to give you 7,000 RPGs!
Yeah, this wasn't the most diverse lineup of games at an E3 presentation. The obvious response to this would be, yeah, it's f***ing Square Enix. But that doesn't change the fact that if you really aren't into RPGs, you probably didn't get much out of this presentation, as even the Marvel segment, while lengthy, was more of a story and character showcase rather than a gameplay one.
Regardless though, the sheer amount of good content pretty much cements them in the spot no lower than this. Good show, Square. Now, please don't f*** it up. Yeah, boy! I want it! Give me it!
So, in a surprising turn of events, just after everyone was certain Square had E3 in the bag, Nintendo decided that they were going to walk up to the dinner table with their ninjas, shank Square Enix, and promptly take away E3 for themselves.
It was the biggest shock. Not because anyone thought Nintendo's Direct was gonna suck, but because we had already received a Nintendo Direct rather recently on one of Nintendo's biggest titles, so you could assume not much more about that would have been talked about. And even more recently, Nintendo stated that their main focus for E3 was going to be titles slated for 2019.
Well, there's about half of 2019 left, and they've already announced a sizable lineup of games that would come out this year multiple months ago. Given that information, you could infer that they were just going to show more details of what we have already seen, along with a new playable character for Smash Bros. You could infer that. You would have been wrong. My money! Not only did we get the in-depth gameplay trailers for all the previously known titles like Luigi's Mansion 3, Link's Awakening Remake, Daemon X Machina, Animal Crossing, and Astral Chain, but we also got release dates for all of these things, with the vast majority of them coming out in a couple of months. Then on top of that, Nintendo decided to just throw out shit that they apparently had hiding in their vault of secrets. Things like Mario and Sonic in the Olympic Games, Panzer Dragoon, Tales of Mana, finally, No More Heroes 3, another Zelda game! We just just got one of those! Of course, there's the incessant flood of other games Nintendo keeps porting in order to vindicate the masses who believe that every game ever should be on the Switch, and you know what? The more that happens, the more I start to believe it.
Oh, and remember that new playable character for Smash Bros. We talked about earlier?
There were 2 of them.
There he is! There he is! There he is! Pop him! Get him out of here, boy! Yeah! Note to self, the secret formula to automatically winning E3 is 2 Smash plus 2 Zelda. The other publisher should probably write that one down. Oh wait, that wouldn't do anything. This has been Dark Knight II, John and Aster. We'd like to thank you for all for joining us in the Realm of Darkness. E3 may not have been that impressive overall, but it was definitely entertaining to watch for the most part.
We hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we did, and you can see how much we enjoyed E3 with our E3 reaction highlights videos coming out soon after this one.
Until then, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Oh, by the way, John, DL put Gion at like 8th place on the top 14 Organ members video. Just thought you should know that.
Excuse me?